Thank you so much for joining me today. I know you all probably all have a busy day and you have a lot of options of how you can spend your time. So I appreciate you spending this next hour with me. And I also just want to give a thank you to the Cloud Software Association for this opportunity to share some learnings with all of you. So today we will talk about strategic partnerships and ecosystems and how to leverage major ecosystems to drive growth for yourself. And specifically, I want to share the partnership story between ActiveCampaign and Salesforce, how we became the #1 marketing automation in the Salesforce AppExchange only 6 months after launch, and how 3 years later, the partnership is still going strong and Salesforce continues to open new opportunities for us. And truly, we've crafted a pretty unique relationship with Salesforce. While my story really centers around the Salesforce ecosystem today, the learnings generally can be applied to any major ecosystems. So I wanted to share really 5 key ways to leverage major ecosystems on their own terms. And I'll show you why they worked so well for our partnership with Salesforce. So I'll talk about how you can find the right stakeholders, how to get their attention, how do you build alignment, and also perform and grow together as partners. Just some spoiler alert to start. I know in this culture of efficiency and scalable growth, I think we all want to talk about scale all the time. But the story I'm about to share today does involve doing things that don't scale. So what this means is it won't work for all of your partners if you try to do this with everybody all at once, but it will work for any of them. So you just have to pick which partner. So I am Xiaofei Zhang, and I'm Senior Director of Strategic Partnerships at ActiveCampaign. So for those of you who aren't quite familiar, ActiveCampaign is a leading marketing automation platform. We help businesses of all sizes accelerate their growth by automating personalized customer experiences. So we offer a suite of solutions like email marketing, marketing automation, CRM, e-commerce marketing, landing pages, etc. But at the core, everything is really centered around automation. In the last 5 years, the company actually experienced tremendous growth. So we have grown from just a little under 20 million in ARR to over 250 million in ARR. So we now have 185,000 customers around the world in over 170 countries. Just to put things in perspective, we have customers in more countries than McDonald's have locations. So that's just wild to think about. I wanted to just share that fun fact. So for me personally, I oversee our partnership efforts at ActiveCampaign. So that includes our app ecosystem, which includes over 900 integrations, and our strategic alliances, technology partners, as well as our marketing, referral partners, and agency partners. So before ActiveCampaign, I worked on product partnerships at Salesforce. So now you might be wondering, you're like, hold on a second, you're going to share a partnership story between ActiveCampaign and Salesforce, and you have worked at both companies as well. So that is correct. It is not a coincidence, but it's actually part of the story. So let's dive in here. Well, this is the fairy tale I want to share with you today, if you will. It's how ActiveCampaign became the #1 marketing automation app in the Salesforce AppExchange within 6 months of going live. So the true beginning was really dialed back to 2018. So our team at ActiveCampaign was really starting to notice that Salesforce is becoming a most requested app. So in our app marketplace, you can obviously search for an app and install from there. And also when customers search for apps and we don't have them, we actually track those. And instead of surfacing you nothing, we actually surface an app request form. So, hey, do you want to put in your request? What apps are you looking for? And we're keeping track of this feedback. So our team has really started noticing the searches and requests for Salesforce integration is at all-time high. And we also took a closer look at what those accounts are. So were those existing customers or trial accounts? And then from there, we went into lost deals reasons. And our team was able to associate about $1 million lost revenue because of Salesforce, or rather a lack of Salesforce integration. And on the other hand, our sales team are also tracking churn reasons from customers. And from there, we were able to uncover another over 500K churn due to a lack of Salesforce integration. So from our team really took a deep dive, and we talked to a lot of our lost and churned customers. So there were some interesting insights that we discovered. So customers were telling us, actually, a lot of them, when they were thinking about their software purchase journey, they actually started with buying a CRM first, setting up the leads and managing the customer information and relationships. And oftentimes they bought Salesforce to start. And then they started adding on, other tools like a marketing tool or other solutions to their tech stack. So what that means is, if we didn't integrate with Salesforce, those customers just simply wouldn't buy our solution. So essentially, we could have easily saved $1.5 million in revenue had we just had an integration with Salesforce. And the cost of building it, it would just easily pay for itself. So at that point, the decision was made is we need to build an integration to Salesforce, and we also need to form a partnership there. So our team was obviously very ambitious in the very beginning. We had lofty goals. We really weren't interested in somewhat like a standard partnership, if you will. We're probably all very familiar, because I'm assuming a lot of you, also work in the partnership space. When you try to approach a major ecosystem, usually they have like very rigid program and rules you have to follow to join. And oftentimes you kind of work your way up, right? You are at the bottom and then you work your way up, and that's usually associated with a lot of revenue share, where you really have to do a lot to really get anybody's attention. And if you try to reach out to them, and you would always just get a standard answer of like, oh, hey, please see our API docs, or hey, here is our co-marketing PDF. So our team was not interested in this help yourself kind of route. We wanted Salesforce to help us drive new business. And we also truly believe that we have unique ways to help Salesforce as well. So we decided to really focus on, how do we get closer to Salesforce? And we just started networking our way and trying all avenues to get intros. I'm sure for all of you on the call today, Salesforce is an 80,000 people company. So you probably know someone who works at Salesforce, or you know someone who knows someone who works at Salesforce. So that's how we started, was really trying everyone's connection. And we would just take whatever calls, or anybody from Salesforce that want to talk to us, we would take the calls. And we also reach out to our existing partners. We would ask them, hey, do you have a partnership with Salesforce, and would you mind introducing us? So that's how we got started. Every month, our team would just talk to different teams and different departments and organizations within Salesforce. And in every conversation, we would obviously first try to learn more about that specific team, what they do, what their priorities are, and we would actively think about how we can help them. And then it finally clicked. I think this process probably took a solid year, but around the end of 2018 to early 19, our team was introduced to the Salesforce Essentials team. Just a little bit more background on Essentials. So back then, Salesforce was really realizing that they were very successful in capturing their upmarket customers with the core solutions. So by that, I mean like mid-market and huge enterprises. And they were really starting to saturate that market. And in order to find that next wave of growth, they really had to go down market and go into the SMBs again, so they can build a large base of customers that can grow with them over time. But the problem was, the Salesforce core solutions are just a little bit too complicated for the small business market. And the Salesforce go-to-market motion has been primarily sales-driven to date. And that was really the context of how the Salesforce Essentials product was born. It was essentially a simplified CRM built for small business. So a lot of the complexity in the product was taken away. It was somewhat a limited feature set. So a lot of features were like small businesses didn't need or were removed. And they also focused a lot more on a more self-service onboarding experience, and they enabled self-service checkout and sales as well. But still, it was a new product back then, and Salesforce needed to drive traction there. So that was why a partnership team was formed. And upon learning about this, our team immediately knew that we could help them. Because for ActiveCampaign, historically for the company, we have always been very product-led and very bottoms up. And we have accumulated a large base of small business customers over time. Just for some context, even back in 2018, the team, we were doing over 50,000 trials a month, and over half of those were self-converting. So through talking to the Salesforce Essentials leadership team, we actually also discovered a critical piece of fact is the team told us that Salesforce Essentials would actually not integrate with the upmarket Salesforce Marketing Cloud product because it was too complex and too expensive. And that's when we immediately realized we hit the jackpot here. Because if we partner with Salesforce Essentials, we will not only solve a product gap for them, like being the email marketing or marketing automation solution for all Essentials customers. And from there, we would be able to drive new business for Salesforce and also in turn for ActiveCampaign. So it was truly a match made in heaven. And just from here, taking a quick pause here, looking back, how do I know this strategy worked? Because I was actually living it on the other end. So as I was alluding to earlier, I work at ActiveCampaign now, and before I worked at Salesforce, and I was exactly on the Salesforce Essentials team back then. So I was the first partnership hire for the Essentials partnership team, and I later became the partner manager for ActiveCampaign. So I've essentially been along this ride since the very beginning, like the formation of the relationship, or the strategy, the execution, and I know pretty much firsthand what has worked so well for this partnership. But also during that time, I formed such productive working relationships and also just personal relationships and connections with folks from ActiveCampaign. And I continue to grow my passion for helping customers and also growing small businesses. That later, I decided to transition and join ActiveCampaign in October 2021. So it might be cheesy, but with every partnership, it's people on either end. So that's why relationships and connections are so important in the partnership ecosystem. So, and actually I was not alone. So I actually joined ActiveCampaign with one of my fellow Essentials colleagues. So this is one of those things you can't really quantify, but it is a sign of a successful and productive partner relationship. So with all of that, I think just coming back to this, all of that is to say that the relationship ActiveCampaign has formed with Salesforce was really powerful. And now I will go in depth into every piece of the puzzle and really, leading up to how this partnership became such a well-oiled machine. And specifically, I believe I have a pretty unique perspective because I have been on both sides. So I can kind of help you paint a full picture here, because oftentimes when you hear like a partnership story, it's shared by one party. But in this case, I'm going to give you both sides of the perspective. So now I'm probably going to switch my narrative perspective back and forth a little bit. So I will walk through what ActiveCampaign did back then. And also, I'll also tell you how it was received by me in the Salesforce leadership team back then. So rewind back to late 2018, early 2019. So that was shortly after I joined as the first partnership hire onto the Essentials team. I was introduced to ActiveCampaign pretty quickly after that. I will be honest, frankly, I have not heard of ActiveCampaign at all before that point, and nor had my leadership team. But Essentials, back then, we were a new BU. It was full of possibilities. Everything was on the table, and we were very open to chatting with anyone. So at that time, essentially, I just took lots and lots of partnership calls all day. But just through a few conversations, I just knew ActiveCampaign would very quickly rise to the top. I was pretty much very quickly impressed by the ActiveCampaign team, and I got excited about the opportunity. And I was frankly a little surprised at how under the radar ActiveCampaign was. So there were a few reasons why I was excited about this opportunity. So first, as I mentioned earlier, we knew Essentials had a product gap. We weren't integrating with Marketing Cloud or Pardot, so we had no marketing automation capabilities. But small business customers are looking for that kind of functionality as well. So it would be a barrier down the road, and we would have to look for partners to solve that. And second, I was really impressed by ActiveCampaign's self-service motion. And that was exactly what Salesforce didn't have back then, because I mentioned Salesforce has always been very sales-led in the go-to-market motion. But with Essentials, we wanted to build a self-service motion, and that's what ActiveCampaign already excelled at. And third, for the Essentials partnership team back then, our goal was not only to fill the product gap with partner solutions, but we are also tasked with driving top of funnel growth for partners through partnerships. And AC showed incredible potential to be that partner for us. So that really led me to my first takeaway here is every business needs something. Even enterprise or major ecosystems, they're not the exception here. So your task would be really trying to find out to where you can help a partner in a way only uniquely you can and no one else is able to do. All right. So as the partnership conversation kept going and ActiveCampaign has started kind of kicking off building their integration to Salesforce. And that's when we started having go-to-market conversations in parallel. Just for some context, I already mentioned the Essentials team was a new business unit. On one hand, we had actually a lot of ambition. So there were a lot of ideas we want to innovate on. And we also had a considerable flexibility to break some barriers. But still, being inside an 80,000 people company, there were a lot of constraints and limits on really what we are able to do or offer to partners. So that's why, like go-to-market with Salesforce, like historically, we've always been fairly limited in what we're able to offer to partners. But meanwhile, ActiveCampaign had way more flexibility and being a much smaller startup and a much more nimble organization. And they were really just unfazed in all their conversations with us on go-to-market. They would just overwhelm us with co-marketing opportunities and ideas. So just a fun fact, at one point, ActiveCampaign's current CMO, Shay Hao, who led the partnership back then, so he offered to wear an AC mascot costume and walk Mark Benioff's dog, Koa, who was the Essentials mascot back then. Obviously, our team at Salesforce immediately said no. It's like, how could this ever be possible, right? It's never going to happen. But the point was, AC was always showing up as a good partner. So they not only offered lots of ideas, like co-marketing, what we can do, how we can go to market together, they actually also offered to execute on a lot of those on behalf of Salesforce and actually, helping to execute go-to-market strategy for us, helping us drive trials. And some of those ideas are what we would never be allowed or get approval for, but are things that we were actually excited about. So as the conversation went on, we were just also more and more excited about this opportunity to work with ActiveCampaign. So just to give you some idea, this was one of those meetings that I would never forget. So in one meeting, the ActiveCampaign team, they walked in with a 40-page presentation full of go-to-market ideas. And all of those they offered to fully execute for Salesforce on our behalf to drive trials or top of funnel for us. And they skipped over all the basics. Because, like in partnership, when you go to market, there are the standard stuff we always do, right? You can do a blog swap or social media, PR, all of that stuff. They skipped all of those in this deck. And they only went for the unique options. So for example, like they offered to do pixel retargeting for us to target our prospects on their website. and they offer to promote Salesforce on their login page and put Salesforce in their employee email signature promos. They offer to share G2 intent data and run campaigns together, or they build lots of automation recipes and show how their customers can use the Salesforce integration. Those were just a few examples. And for every opportunity, they not only kind of talked through it, there were design mockups for each one of those. And they also showed the estimated reach for us, actually, on those opportunities. And again, they've been reiterating all of those are things that they would execute for us. They would do all the work. And as they went through the deck, even though I'm excited, I knew immediately most of this thing would never happen. Like even if ActiveCampaign offered to do them, like we would not be able to get approval for any of that. So the call kind of almost became a little bit comical in the sense that as they walked through each slide in the presentation one by one, we just kept saying no. So we would be like, oh, that's an interesting idea. No, we can't really do that. And then be like, oh yeah, love that, but no, can't really do it. So we just like kept going. And later, actually, Shay told me he was secretly counting how many no's that he would get in this meeting. I'm pretty sure we said about 50 to 100 no's in that meeting. But I think interesting things started happening there because with every no, usually, we would like give them some more context why, that's not possible. So we essentially shared more information with them. And also with every no, just emotionally, our team genuinely started feeling bad about it because essentially there is a partner in front of us who's so motivated and eager to do things, and they've offered so many ways that they would do the work for us, but we aren't able to do anything together. So in the end, essentially what we said was, love all of those ideas and would really appreciate the effort. And we know you're trying. So let's just figure out what we can do together. So essentially after a long list of no's from our team, we eventually gave a yes, which is ActiveCampaign has earned our commitment to find dedicated ways to go to market with them together as partners. So that led me to my second takeaway here. Even looking back to date, I think ActiveCampaign may have done more go-to-market with Salesforce than any average partner, just because of this relentless effort. Like they knew 95% of the ideas would just never happen, which is okay, because the 5% that did happen are still golden. And I can validate that. For the 5% that we were able to offer to ActiveCampaign, those were things that we rarely offered to any other partners, because a lot of those still required, custom arrangement and custom approvals. So those were still golden opportunities. And when AC kind of officially went to market with the Salesforce integration, because they did so much co-marketing with our team, Crossbeam ended up writing an article about our partnership and really a play-by-play of the activities at launch and also this ongoing relationship. So the second takeaway really is, yes, doesn't happen immediately, but please don't let the no's turn you away, because no's are a really good way to allow you and the other party to really clarify what you really want by eliminating what you don't want. So when you're working with the major ecosystems, don't artificially limit yourself, like thinking, Salesforce would just never do that, or Microsoft would never do that. Just go ahead and just let the partner tell you no, because over time it adds up and eventually you will get a yes. I think this is pretty well understood, that great partnerships are built on strong relationships, and the soft skill side is an equally important piece of the puzzle. So for this partnership, we worked really hard, but we also had a lot of fun together. Actually, every quarter, I would get an email from Shay. He would be like, hey, I'm in town for a meeting. Would you like to meet up? And later, I would find out actually Shay didn't have any other meeting, and he would just make up excuses to try to come visit the Essentials team and also physically walk into the Salesforce office. And also every time when ActiveCampaign came to visit, they would always be so intentionally trying to create some memorable experience with our team. So for example, like every time Shay came to visit, he would get Andy Town coffee for everyone. So Andy Town is like this specialty, amazing coffee shop in San Francisco, just had delicious coffee. And yeah, later on, effectively, I've associated Andy Town with ActiveCampaign. And well, the other example would be like the ActiveCampaign team would always just bring really nice swags, and they would shower the Essentials team with swags. And when I talk about swags, it's like the nice ones. So one time Shay showed up with like a suitcase of obviously ActiveCampaign branded Patagonia jackets, but those were like nice swags. Another thing is we've never done dinner. I know like, in our industry, it's probably a pretty standard way where I would call even a somewhat lazy a default option to deal with your partner is, you can go to dinner. While those are great, and those aren't necessarily always memorable, but instead we've done some interesting things together. Like we've gone to the Warriors game, and we've even gotten into a Pop-A-Shot tournament in a bar. Just a couple of examples. And those are oftentimes much cheaper than dinner. But at the end of the day, really like people value and share their experiences. So that's why you always wanted to try really intentionally to create those moments that they will remember later down the road. So as more and more folks, have at least like one piece of ActiveCampaign swag because they've really done a good job of showering our team, you just started seeing like my teammates started carrying ActiveCampaign swags around, right? It's either like sometimes it'd be a notebook, or it could be a sticker on their laptop where they would just wear the Patagonia jackets and all of that stuff. So effectively what you're seeing at this point is even though ActiveCampaign wasn't physically present in the Salesforce office, but they planted all these advocates and ambassadors essentially carrying their brand around in the Salesforce tower. Later, I would find out that Shay made it it's a pretty silly game. I would say that he would always try to spot an AC swag while he's on a virtual call with our team because, a lot of us have flexible desks. So he might spot some people walking around with ActiveCampaign swag. So he would just make that a goal to see if he can see that. And also like ActiveCampaign didn't just stop with the Essentials team. Obviously, there was amazing alignment between Essentials and ActiveCampaign back then to serve the small business market. Like they knew with any major organization, like alignment just wouldn't stay here forever, right? Priorities always change. There's like a new thing that, every quarter that people work on. So they got to also go beyond the Essentials team and just generally build more advocates within Salesforce. And yeah, that's just what they kept doing. And it just started happening. Like more and more people have heard about AC. And even when ActiveCampaign wasn't in the four walls of Salesforce, they've had advocates essentially carrying them around the office. So that led me to my third takeaway here. Obviously, the goal to try to see ActiveCampaign swags in a virtual call was a bit arbitrary. But I think at the bottom of it, it's what I would call building a partnership brand awareness. Like this is one of those things you can't really quantify, but it's important because it will allow you to capture value later. I'll give you an example. So, as AC met more and more folks from ActiveCampaign, they're growing their awareness within Salesforce. And this happened when, we had to advocate and fight for AC for some custom go-to-market arrangements and some custom partnership terms. So we had to actually work internally with quite some internal teams to figure that out. And some of those team members would say, "Oh yeah, we've spoken to ActiveCampaign recently. Yeah, we know what they're doing and all of that." So that actually, made my job easier. So all of that is to say, a lot of the soft skills, the soft side of things are really starting to pay off as well because organically Salesforce employees or teams have started talking about AC. Yeah. So third takeaway, have fun here and also just take the relationship seriously and try to really find a way, even though those are soft skills, and try to find a way to measure them as well. And don't underestimate the value of unique experiences. So at this point, we are fast forwarding to mid 2019, and ActiveCampaign was getting ready to launch the integration. So looking back, the launch actually went really smooth and super successful. So it was very well coordinated. All the channels were activated. Like ActiveCampaign has done enablement for their sales team, and they set up emails to all of their customers. And they also set up very targeted outreach to customers who previously told them that they used Salesforce before. And our co-branded assets went live. The co-marketing stuff had kicked off, and all of that stuff. So the launch was really smooth. But I know ActiveCampaign didn't stop there. Well, I think we all know this. With every partnership or major launch, the launch is only the beginning, because at launch, obviously, all the activities would just give you a spike, but it would eventually taper off if that's all you did, right? You can't just anticipate things would just keep growing. So that's why AC kept going. So they didn't stop there at the launch. So one thing that they did, so ActiveCampaign actually hosts this series of customer education events called study halls. So they would host them multiple times a week across the country and also around the world. And they would actually physically sit down with the customers in every study hall, help them install the Salesforce integration, set it up, and set up the automations to make sure everything's working. And through that process, they would collect feedback from the customers as well to help them iterate and improve on things. So I would say, actually, the initial launch was just version 1 of the integration. It was pretty bare bone. It did the basics, but pretty bare bone. But I was pretty impressed by how quickly they were able to put out version 2 that was so much more powerful, and that drove another wave of adoption. So before long, actually, we had 1,000 installs or mutual customers on this integration. So in many ways, at this point, AC has already surpassed what most AppExchange partners is able to accomplish. 1,000 installs on your AppExchange app, that's a huge number. Yeah, but again, the team didn't really stop there, because to date, as you probably figured out, most of this partnership effort is revolved around the Essentials team, the small business unit. But the integration itself was actually built to work with all Salesforce editions. So it was pretty clear that ActiveCampaign wanted to keep growing their influence within the Salesforce ecosystem. So one thing that ActiveCampaign really excelled at was they really optimized their AppExchange presence to attract new customers. I actually don't think a lot of partners or apps paid attention to that. But through some trial and error, and also through leveraging their relationship with us, AC actually learned very quickly how the AppExchange marketplace works. And I'm going to share the same 3 secrets with you today as well. So first is the AppExchange pretty much operates like a SEO engine. So kind of just like Google search. So you wanted to really optimize your listing title, description, and everything you're putting on your listing, optimize for the keywords that you're trying to rank for. Second is, while you may think installs and usage is really important, actually driving traffic to your listing is a much more influential factor. And the third thing is you need to have good reviews for your app. So knowing those 3 things, AC pretty much went into action. So first is they significantly revamped their listing, optimized for all the keywords. Second, they started doing all the paid marketing promotion programs that Salesforce has, what we call the AppExchange marketing program. And also they went through an audit of all of their Salesforce assets on their own website. And then they just started redirecting the CTAs. So instead of pointing within ActiveCampaign, they pointed everything to AppExchange, to this managed package. And the third thing is that they set up an automated and consistent way to collect reviews from integration customers. So just by doing a combination of those things, 6 months after launch, ActiveCampaign grabbed the #1 spot in the marketing automation category in AppExchange. So on their next visit to Salesforce, this is another meeting that I will remember. We were doing QBR with ActiveCampaign, and I had brought in my leadership as well. And that's when AC shared that they officially became the #1 marketing automation app on Salesforce. And I just remember this sign of disbelief from my leadership team, because at first they thought, oh, you're doing great and you must be ranking after Pardot or Marketing Cloud. But in fact, AC outranked Salesforce's own solution. So that was really, I would say, a pivotal moment in the dynamics of this relationship. Obviously, all of ActiveCampaign's efforts paid off. They worked really hard, but I would say that the team also worked really smart as well. So that leads me to the fourth takeaway. Really getting the #1 position for in Salesforce AppExchange, it not only drives customer acquisition, it drives new business, but it's a point of influence. Like being able to share this, because AC started sharing this in all of their calls with other Salesforce teams, and they would just immediately grab people's attention. Because while people may have heard of you, they didn't realize how big you are in the ecosystem already. And this actually also carried across ecosystems. So when Shay would go pitch other partners, let's say Microsoft, he got in touch with their head of partnership and mentioned that AC was #1 in the Salesforce marketplace. And he immediately got a call the next day because Microsoft wanted to figure out what happened, how to work with us. So so the last point is, with any major ecosystem or integration, while installs, usage, revenue, those are important, don't estimate the added value that major ecosystem, marketplace provides. Like public perception actually carries influence as well, and it will help you generate new business opportunities down the road. So fast forward to 2020, I think that's a year, most of us probably want to forget. A lot of things happened and it feels pretty distant at this point. But when COVID initially hit Salesforce, we pretty much had to pivot very quickly. So first order of business was to just stabilize everything, like check in with your customers, your employees, making sure everybody's okay. And the second was Salesforce was really actively thinking about what they can do, the role that they play in the combat of COVID. So that's when they quickly decided that to launch this new suite of solutions called Work.com. Essentially, it's a suite of solutions to help with contact tracing, COVID tracking, employee wellness checks, and all of that stuff. So a lot of my Essentials teammates actually got pulled into Work.com. And essentially for the partnerships team, we have pretty much paused most of our partnership effort as well at that point. So many of you may think, oh, well, this is it. That's the end of the relationship. But it actually happened quite the opposite way. We actually kept meeting with ActiveCampaign and we stayed in conversations throughout 2020 and 2021. Looking back, I would say COVID almost was like set a level playing field for everyone because none of us had experienced this before. So we were all trying to figure out what to do. Like no one knew what was the right thing to do. So, we were all struggling, trying to figure things out. And that's when you wanted to talk to your trusted partners who's also going through this. And so how to navigate this as well. And ActiveCampaign exactly played that role for us during that time. So as we kept meeting, in each meeting, they would essentially always try to do two things. First is ask how our priorities have evolved at Salesforce and where they could help. And second is they would always try to share some learnings or some insights with us and try to provide value to us. Like because we're both in the SMB space, they would share how their small business customers were doing in the pandemic and the competitors, how are they doing, the market, industry, what's happening. So it always felt very valuable talking to the ActiveCampaign team, even though this had nothing to do with our specific partnership. But the meeting just felt valuable to keep. And we stayed in conversations. And sometimes they would share some insights that I would actually later forward to other departments or organizations at Salesforce and actually help them spread kind of their insights and good work. And that led to kind of ActiveCampaign being introduced to more and more teams within Salesforce, and led to them always being top of mind for us. And soon, another opportunity occurred actually shortly after that, which is with Slack. And that's when we brought ActiveCampaign into this opportunity with the Slack team. So that was right around when the Slack acquisition by Salesforce closed. We brought in the ActiveCampaign team pretty quickly after that. And that was around the time I started transitioning as well. So I transitioned from Salesforce into the ActiveCampaign team and started kind of running this relationship forward. And we pretty much rerun the same playbook, right? We would try to identify what Slack is trying to do, their priorities, and where we could help them. So that's when we discovered like Slack's growth strategy, right? A lot of it is centered around how can they recruit more users within an organization to adopt Slack. And their partnership goal a lot of times is centered around adoption, like monthly active users, daily active users, those kind of things. And back then, they were also trying to grow their sales and marketing users personas, because those were somewhat weak compared to some of the other personas. And that's when we knew immediately we can help again, because we primarily works with sales and marketing users. So we can definitely help in this regard. So that's when we decided to build a Slack bot, like an ActiveCampaign Slack bot. Essentially, it brings the native capabilities of ActiveCampaign into Slack, and we pretty much are aligned to Slack's product strategy. So we very intentionally built like product-led features to organically prompt users on board and all of that. So as part of this effort, Slack has also recognized us in many different ways. Like we became the exclusive marketing automation partner in their digital first toolkit campaign, and also tools for marketing teams, campaigns. They featured us in so many things, like in emails, webinars, social posts, marketplace listings. We offered custom discounts to their customer base, etc. Those are, again, the things that you would never be able to buy from a partner, had you just been on a standard path. So that led me to my last point is really motion is momentum, create value outside of the partnership. It was ActiveCampaign's consistency to always provide value in every call, not only throughout the pandemic, but also just throughout every interaction with Salesforce. And they were able to stay top of mind for people. So when new opportunities came up, they were ready to go. Even today, we are continuing to explore new opportunities with Salesforce and with the Slack team, which we're hoping to announce later. So the final takeaway is don't let the boundaries of a relationship be determined by the partnership itself, and really try to find ways to provide value outside of that, because it allows you to build trust and also retain momentum. And that will help you open new doors down the road. All right. Thank you for following me along. I know this was a pretty long presentation, so thank you for sticking with me until this point, and we're almost at the end here. So I just want to fast forward to today, kind of looking back on this partnership where we are. So today we have thousands of integrated customers with Salesforce, and our installs have doubled every year since launch. And in terms of revenue, remember we estimated like 1.5 million lost revenue, and that just turned out to be way off, because today we are doing tens of millions of revenue through this integration, which more than doubles every year. And in fact, what we noticed was for the accounts that are using the Salesforce integration, the expansion is just through the roof. It's more than 20% than an average account. So we're not only adding new business or preventing churn, we're actually expanding and growing our existing accounts with this partnership. And we are continuing on our consistency with collecting 5-star reviews as well. So we now have over 75 5-star reviews on the AppExchange. And today we still outrank Pardot in the marketing automation category. All right, so the last slide is a summary of the 5 takeaways from today. First is everybody needs something. Find out where you can help and offer what only you can offer. Second is don't worry about what they'll say no to. Use no to learn, and you will eventually get to yes. Third is build advocates through memorable experiences and deeper connections so that the advocates can represent you when you are not present. The last, fourth one is use public marketplaces to showcase your success and build influence. And the last piece is you can continue to open opportunities by creating and showing value outside of the direct partnership. So that's everything I wanted to share today. I know it is a lot. And also, as I mentioned, a lot of these aren't things that are scalable, and none of this is easy, but these are repeatable things that you can do. So it takes a lot of creative thinking and persistence, but once you follow through the playbook and you do this, you will be able to win an ecosystem on their own terms as well. So thank you so much for joining today. I'm going to quickly check on the questions and also start answering some of that.
So maybe the first question from Eric, what were the initial exploratory conversations with Salesforce like? Who led the conversations and what was the title of the folks involved?
Yeah, for sure. So that's actually a great question. And I will say back then when ActiveCampaign started reaching out to Salesforce, it was a very all hands on deck strategy at ActiveCampaign. Essentially, everybody from top to bottom was involved. So it was primarily driven by the ELT, essentially. Our CEO, Jason, was very involved, and he led a lot of outreach into Salesforce, and also, Shay back then was our VP, and a lot of other leadership, our sales VP, marketing leaders, and pretty much it was an all hands on deck strategy because back then, ActiveCampaign was also a lot smaller. So, for a small fish to try to play with a big fish, first of all, they really zoned in and focused on one big target, right? Salesforce was the target that we were trying to get. And then they just went all in with that approach. So, and I think just with that determination, and that's how, they were able to gain traction and have a lot of conversations set up. So especially working with strategic partners, it takes a lot. I think having a top to bottom alignment is super important. So hopefully that answers that.
Awesome. Next question from Sunir Shah. Enterprise partnerships are an interesting process, similar to enterprise sales. I love the identification of the product gap opportunity. How long did it take for SFDC to see the same value? How many layers of management did you have to pitch it to before it clicked?
Yeah, and thank you, Sunir, for the question. Yeah, I totally agree. It definitely feels like enterprise sales. I would say as you have more conversations with a specific company, things would get easier as you go on because you also start to learn more about them. And even you can preamble even some of the conversation before you even have them. I think that's what ActiveCampaign did throughout, probably hundreds and hundreds of conversations. They learned more and more about Salesforce. So then they also got better at how, very quickly identifying what that team cares about, right? Essentially, to make Salesforce care, you really want to figure out what they care about and then speak directly to that. So back then, coming back to the essentials examples, we had a product gap and also we needed partners to drive trials, right? So they very quickly were able to get to those 2 points. And then they just started, really pounding on those things. We can help you with both things. So then later the conversation just was a no-brainer. Here is the partner that can help with both of our top goals. So why don't we work with them? So back, once they got through our leadership team, it just became very easy after that. And there wasn't a lot of resistance after. So
awesome. All right. And one last question from Bradley Blinn. What GTM activities did Salesforce actually agree to that generated results for ActiveCampaign?
Yeah, for sure. That is a great question. So a lot of the co-marketing activities, as I mentioned, it's that 5%, right? Because we turned down 95% of them. So with some of the 5% stuff, we actually rarely offer to others. So we have done like co-branded landing pages. We've created a custom offer for ActiveCampaign customers coming over to Salesforce, and there were cross promotion going on. Like we would reach out to our own customer base about this integration. And also ActiveCampaign came in town and did sales enablement for the entire Essentials like sales team, or back then it was called coaches. So they were the only partner that we made this happen. So a lot of those are truly ended up being unique and exclusive opportunities that we only offered to ActiveCampaign. And later, just the entire team became very familiar with their solution. Our sales team just started recommending ActiveCampaign as soon as you guys are talking to an Essentials prospect and they mention marketing. Our sales team would just get into the habit of saying, "Oh, we have this partner ActiveCampaign. They have an integration with us. You can check it out." So a lot of those like flywheels just started turning from that.
Awesome. And sorry, one more follow-up question from Eric Bai. Was it always clear what to prioritize once engaged, or were there some projects that turned out to be more of a distraction?
I think I'm taking some liberty in interpreting like your question, Eric. You're probably saying like there are probably a million things you can do with a partner, and how do you determine which ones will be most impactful? I think the answer is almost much easier for smaller companies trying to work with these like big fish or sharks. Is anything you can get from them is amazing, because there aren't many opportunities where you're able to do that. So I would say none of those would be distractions, right? Because think about how hard you need to work to get in the door with a Salesforce or with a big partner. And like how you have to pitch 100 things to maybe only get 5 things. So I wouldn't call any of those things are a distraction. When you're going all in with a partner, you pull out all the stops and you do everything. And later on, I think when you have the luxury of advancing to the next phase, really optimizing it, that's when you can figure out, oh, maybe we pump the brake on this one or do more of that. But at the beginning, like I wouldn't turn down anything, because getting anything is, golden. So, all right. Thank you. Take care.